Maryland, Netherlands. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to our HR case and knowledge management, the what, why, and how of deployment. We look forward to sharing insights on how to successfully implement HR case and knowledge management. Before we get started on the content, I want to share our safe harbor notice. As a reminder, you shouldn't be making any purchasing decisions based on any roadmap or forward-looking statements that we might make in this presentation. We always try to deliver the best experiences for our customers and listen to what our customers need. Therefore, our future plans and priorities can change. So we always want to share this notice at the beginning. Just a few housekeeping notes as we get started. Please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen if you want to ask questions during today's webinar rather than using the chat. That's going to help us be able to track them much more efficiently. We will be posting this session on the ServiceNow community, so you will have access to the recording and the deck after this is over. And finally, when we wrap up, you'll see a brief survey pop up, and we encourage you to share your feedback with us so we know what went well and what could be improved for future sessions. With that, let's introduce our speakers for today. My name is Teresa Keeney. I'm a Senior Portfolio Manager for Employee Workflows on ServiceNow's Success at Scale team. We produce implementation, adoption, and transformation content for employee workflows. I've been here at ServiceNow for almost 2 years, and prior to joining the company, I worked with the ServiceNow platform for over 10 years, both as a customer and as a business process consultant within the partner ecosystem. I'm lucky to have a couple of very expert co-hosts with me today, Ian and Sandeep. Would you both like to introduce yourselves?
Thanks, Teresa. Ian Posnick here. I'm a principal solution architect on the employee workflows team at ServiceNow. Our team is responsible for implementing the HR service delivery suite, as well as some of their employee workflows products, such as workplace service delivery and legal service delivery. I've been with ServiceNow for about 7.5 years or so, primarily as a technical consultant and other roles here. And I look forward to the conversation. Thank you. Sandeep?
Hello, everyone. This is Sandeep Tandon. I'm also a principal solution architect within customer outcomes, mainly working on our employee workflow products, which is HR and related products like legal, workplace service delivery, etc. Been at ServiceNow for about 6 years and been in the industry for about 25 years. Most of my career has been around HR consulting, HR operations, shared services, global business services. So been in this space for a long time, seen a lot, and happy to have the discussion and share information with you all.
Thank you both. So I also wanted to let you know that we have a companion webinar available. This webinar was delivered a few weeks ago by Rue Adams and Michael Sheridan, some of our great HRSD experts here at ServiceNow. It focuses on beginning your journey with HR case and knowledge and covers a bit more of the basics, whereas today we will be focusing more on deployment and implementation strategies. So feel free to check this out as an additional resource. Before we dive in, I wanted to do a quick poll to find out where you are within your HR service delivery journey. The poll should automatically appear for you in a moment. We'd love to see how many of you are still considering HR case and knowledge, how many are preparing for an implementation or actively in the middle of one, how many are using HRSD today and possibly thinking about expanding your HR services or other functionality. Or if you're somewhere in between, feel free to share that in the chat. I will give everyone just a few moments to complete that poll. I see we already have some results coming in, so thank you to everyone who's participating. Looks like we have a nice mix today. Most people look like they are considering HR case and knowledge or actively using. So hopefully we will have some great content for you today. If you're still considering HR case and knowledge, I hope the information in this webinar helps to give you some confidence in your decision, and definitely encourage you to watch that companion webinar as well. And if you are actively using case and knowledge, hopefully you'll get some insights as you continue with your ServiceNow HR journey. All right, so I think we're done with the poll. And so I'm going to move on to our next slide. So let's get started by talking about some general implementation approaches. If you are still in the planning phase for your implementation, part of that process will be deciding what to implement. And there are a few different approaches that we've seen some of our customers take to help give their implementation project clarity and focus. So one approach is to start by looking at your HR processes. We see companies who have legacy or homegrown HR systems that might not be integrated with anything else. Maybe their HR teams are siloed with different support centers and processes that may vary by location. Maybe little to no case management, and along with that, no self-service capabilities in place. So if this sounds like your organization, you may want to start a full transformation journey that begins with standing up an HR service center, something to unify those silos, and redefining your HR processes to work holistically across your organization. A second approach we see is geared towards setting up or improving self-service capabilities and focusing on that end-to-end experience that your employees and your HR agents are having. A key part of this approach is implementing an employee-focused service and communication portal, such as ServiceNow Employee Center, and focusing on aspects of the platform which help employees help themselves, like setting up a robust knowledge base where they can find the answers to their questions. There are also great features available to improve the work experience of our HR agents, such as our Now Assist product, which uses AI to help your HR agents be able to work faster and smarter. The third approach really focuses on automation and ensuring that critical and complex processes work well end to end. We have seen organizations who are looking to make strategic changes to their critical business processes due to maybe regulatory or compliance findings, or because that process is just negatively impacting their business. This type of a transformation effort helps to narrow the implementation focus to redefining and automating a specific process or a set of processes, like employee relations. So these are just some things to consider if you're looking for a place to start and some help to create a specific focus for your implementation. We also have a great resource available to help with your implementation and roadmap planning. We have an HRSD recommended implementation sequence, which can help you in your planning efforts and provide guidance as to what we have seen work well for our customers. The sequence is laid out as a single view for HRSD transformation in 5 different stages. And there are also some great resources linked on the left side to help you as you move through your entire journey. So the link to this resource is going to be added to the chat. And as always, it's available on Now Create as well. One more area of focus that can be helpful as you're planning for an HRSD deployment is to focus on those moments that matter most for your employees. It's really easy to focus on the question, what does the platform do and how can we implement that? But I want to encourage you to come at it from the mindset of what do my employees need and use that as a method of prioritization. So when you start to identify what they want to know, what they want to do, what they need help with, and when they need specific personalized care, you can prioritize those topics to help you determine what you specifically need for your MVP, what should be quick follows, and what can be added to your future roadmap. The platform does a lot and we can't implement everything at once. So considering what your employees need and then prioritizing that functionality based on those needs can really help to alleviate some of that implementation overwhelm. And with that, let's talk more specifically about HR case management deployments. So this is a high-level deployment checklist that you can use as a starting point for your implementation. We have some really key things that need to be part of all deployments. And beneath those key categories, your specific deployment checklist may vary based on the scope that you've defined. So these core areas are activating the plugins, setting up your core data, configuring your HR services, defining your HR security, ensuring that you have a great employee experience for both your HR agents and employees, and setting up a successful way to manage and measure everything that has been implemented. We'll talk more in depth about each of these key areas throughout the webinar, and I'm going to start by diving into that third topic, HR services. So HR services are really the foundation of HR case management. These are the specific types of requests and inquiries that your HR team fulfills to support your employees. Some examples are a direct deposit inquiry, medical benefits enrollment, or tuition reimbursement request. Michael Sheridan shared a lot of great foundational information about services in the companion webinar that I've already mentioned. So if you're a little shaky on what HR services are and how they work within the HR case process, I really encourage you to check that out. Today, I want to focus on key ways to help you define your HR services. Behind the scenes, HR service configuration contains many data points, such as what questions are included on the record producer, which is that form that employees submit on the Employee Center to create a new case. All of the details for the process for case fulfillment, such as like what team will be assigned the case, what procedure that team should follow, and so much more. In order to successfully configure HR services which function in the way you need them to, we need to have a good way to define and document requirements for each service, essentially translating the knowledge of your HR teams into specific configuration details that can be used by a ServiceNow developer to get the output that you want. So I'm excited to introduce a new resource to you today, which is designed to help you define your services really quickly and efficiently. We're going to add the link to the chat so that you can download it for yourself and follow along. This is a brand new workbook that we just published this week that is specifically designed for defining multiple services for implementations. Its format is set up very strategically to help your HR project team think through the process for each HR service, which is how they'll work in the platform within HR case management. They'll think through the process, while at the same time defining the specific data points that a ServiceNow developer would need to configure each HR service. I've used this format to define thousands of HR services for ServiceNow customers, and I've seen just how quickly and efficiently service definition can happen as this exercise is practiced again and again. I will give a caveat before we jump in. This is not all-inclusive by any means. There are simply too many configuration options to include in one workbook. What this workbook does cover are the required data points for the core of each HR service and the most common data points which are needed for, I would say, 80% of the services that our customers implement. There will always be exceptions, so feel free to use this as a template and adjust it as you need, and we will also continue to improve it and add to it. So I encourage you to check back into Now Create every once in a while to see if a new version has been published, if this is something that you're using regularly. So jumping into the workbook, the setup of the workbook, you'll notice at the bottom, there are multiple sheets available for you to use. The first sheet is workbook instructions. It's an overview of what is included in the workbook and instructions on how to utilize each sheet. So I encourage you to read through this before using the workbook for the first time. The second sheet is really the core of the workbook. It is the HR services sheet, and this is where you can define all of your HR services in one list view. Using this format is ideal for new implementations and projects where a large number of HR services need to be defined, as it allows for the requirements to be gathered and documented really quickly, for example, in a workshop type setting. It also enables requirements to be categorically reviewed by using the filter functionality. So for example, you can review all of the topic categories that have been defined for a COE to ensure that naming is consistent and that it's aligned with other categories. This is where you'll define one HR service across each row on this sheet. You can see an example with the direct deposit inquiry service. And as I said before, the fields you see across row 2 are in a strategic order. They begin by defining the categorical structure for the HR service, which is COE, topic category, and topic detail. This is the foundation for every service. We continue by defining key data points which are needed to begin the case process, such as the short description for the case, who the case is going to be assigned to, and what priority level the case is assigned. We continue by thinking about the whole process that the case will go through. Once the case is assigned, how quickly should it begin to be worked? We can create a response SLA to track that. Is there a specific workflow that is needed? Maybe approvals or tasks which are automatically sent out? Should the case have any fulfillment instructions or checklist items to help the HR agent work more effectively? And so on, all the way through the process to case closure. Once we've thought about how the service functions within the case process, then we consider how the employee may interact with the service on the Employee Center, as you see in the lower screenshot. We determine if this is a service which will be available on the Employee Center for the employee to submit their own case. And if the answer to that question is yes, then we define the data points for the catalog item and the record producer, which will be available on the Employee Center. I know this is a lot of information, so one of the great aspects of this workbook is that we added terminology definitions and usage guidance to almost every data point. So just hover over each column name to see those details. You can see an example of this pop up at the top, where the topic category cell is highlighted and a note can be seen with that additional guidance. The next 3 sheets contain tables where more details can be gathered in a list view, similar to what we do on the HR services sheet. So on these sheets, you can define requirements for custom fields that are needed on the case form, response templates for HR agents, and SLAs to be tracked against each case. These are all things that we want to associate with an HR service, but that require more details that then can be captured in a single cell, like on that first HR services sheet. So on that first HR services sheet, maybe we said that we want a certain response SLA to be initiated when a case is created for our direct deposit inquiry service. Now on this SLA sheet, we can get down into the details and define exactly how that SLA should function, its duration, its start, pause, stop conditions, etc. Also, this one response SLA may apply to multiple services. So this type of a workbook allows us to define the SLA once while being able to apply it to multiple services. The last 2 sheets in this workbook are used a little bit differently. They are templates, which are meant to be duplicated for each service only as needed. So if you need it, you'll copy the sheet, rename it for that specific service, and you can do this as many times as needed to define detailed requirements for both record producers and case workflows, which are for more complex services. So you can see the examples above. For the record producer template, you can see I've begun to document detailed requirements about the fields which should appear on the direct deposit inquiry form. And I have lots of space to add more fields and build out that form to look exactly as I need. For the workflow template, if I have a more complex service where I want to have approvals, tasks, or unique notifications automatically send out at key times throughout that process, I can define what those are and how they should function. I'll also call out, it's really helpful to have a process flow diagram to go along with that workflow section, just as a visual guide. It can really help to identify, areas that you're not thinking about as you're documenting these requirements. So I hope that this is a helpful resource. I know that defining HR services can be daunting, so a few things to keep in mind as you're going through the process. One, service definition is an exercise. The first couple services you define will go really slowly. This is expected because it's a learning process. Don't get discouraged at the beginning. As you practice using your service definition muscle, you'll get better and faster at defining these services. I promise it happens every time. Start with simple services. Practice defining each column of data for those simple services and then move on to the more complex services as you get more comfortable with the exercise. Also keep in mind that defining services is never done. It's a repetitive process, just like knowledge management. You're never done creating all of the knowledge articles you're ever going to need. So I encourage you to gather feedback after your initial implementation so that you can learn and grow when defining services in the future. And last but not least, service definition truly is an art. It's not a science. There are often not like hard and fast rules we can give you because there are so many nuances to service definition. So this is where an experienced partner or our expert services team can be really beneficial, especially on brand new HRSD implementations, because they can help guide you through the exercise and pass on their wealth of experience, which sets you up for success in defining your own HR services in the future. With that, I will pass it over to Sandeep to discuss our next topic.
Thanks, Teresa. Yeah, thanks so much for that wonderful summary I hope you all on the call find that workbook useful, as it captures pretty much the essence of the service configuration requirements. In this section, we will delve a little bit more into the configuration requirements. So what you see on this slide is the features that are available with the product. So case management comes with a lot of features that you need to weave together to build that service delivery experience that you want to give to your audience or your end users. HR profiles are absolutely mandatory within ServiceNow HR service delivery, and I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide about HR profiles. We spoke about defining the HR services that you want to configure so that okay, that's the size of the project that we're dealing with when we're starting out. Of course, you start small and then you build over a period of time. I did see a question in the Q&A about somebody asking that they had not rationalized their processes before they went about defining the services. So that's a great point. So I do want to introduce, the concept of HR COEs here again, that it's very important that you align to the concept of HR COE provided by ServiceNow. It's based on best practices, typically like how all HR organizations today are structured, within a compensation organization, within a talent management organization, within a payroll organization, within the overall HR organization. So the COEs emulate that structure, and the system comes pre-populated with a lot of HR services which align to these COEs. Of course, these are not all-inclusive, but they're a great starting point, and they have suggested frameworks in terms of how you build the services. So our first recommendation definitely is that when you're starting the project, that's the time when you use spreadsheets like the ones Risa shared to figure out that how the services are going to work out or within the organization and align them as much as possible. If you did not do that, and by any chance, you realized after going live that services are not working the way they're supposed to work, or there are process improvement opportunities that you want to work upon, by no means, it's late in the game. It's a continuous improvement journey, so you can always come back. You can rationalize. You can look at the same workbooks in terms of how you are currently structured, what your services are, the services which are pain point, and fix them. And then depending on how large the fix is, it could be a large release to go out with, or it could be a smaller release to go out with. But it's a continuous improvement process. I hope that sort of answered the question to some extent. Then, of course, we have other features that HR template, record producers. Now, templates basically get activated once you invoke a service, and templates help define the flow of the service. So strong recommendation for you to align templates to every service. A simple example would be somebody in EMEA region made a request, and then based on the template that you have aligned to that service, it will get assigned to maybe the EMEA region service center, and the assignment group would be based on what is defined in the template itself. Record producers, which is the front-facing interface on the ServiceNow portal, where your employees will come in and make the request. Security and groups need to be defined. Notifications that align with every service. When something happens with that service has been requested or some action has been taken, notifications go out to stakeholders. And lastly, the reporting and dashboards. So let me sort of move on to the next slide here and talk a little bit more about the foundational data that you need in HR service delivery. If you are a new ServiceNow customer, then you need to define your core data in the system. And when we say core data, we basically mean this is your organizational structure, that what kind of departments you have within your organization, what kind of locations you're operating from, do you have different business units or even subsidiary companies within the organization to whom you want to provide services, the currencies and time zones applicable. All this is the core data. So if you're already an existing customer of ServiceNow, the core data would exist because that's a fundamental requirement of getting the instance up to have core data set up. Though our recommendation is, even if you are an existing customer, you should revisit the core data to ensure it has everything that you need from an HR service delivery perspective and no element has been missed out. So other than core data, you also need the HR data in the system, and that's where HR profiles come in. HR profiles typically uh, contain all data related to HR for an employee. So what you see on your screen right now is a typical HR profiles. As you can see, confidential HR information in terms of, person's date of birth, country of birth, their national ID, uh, type of employment, and sometimes even, beneficiary information for the individual. All that can be stored in HR profile. Now, most companies have a core HCM system also in play, the likes of Workday or Oracle or whatever you're using. So you need to ensure that there's a single source of truth for HR within your organization. So here our recommendation is that you would integrate your core HCM system with your HR profile so that the data remains consistent between the two systems, that one becomes the source of truth. However, having said that, HR profile, other than being secure for storing HR data, has a lot more flexibility than your core HCM system also. So for some organizations where you don't have the core HCM deployed across the entire global organization, if you're a large global organization, we've seen situations where companies do not deploy the system in some of the smaller countries they operate in. So you have 500 employees in a location, or 600 employees, and you've not deployed your current system, and you're maybe even managing some local system or Excel worksheets to maintain the data. Even there, you can pull in ServiceNow to be the system that provides service delivery. So think of it from that perspective, that the overlaying layer that ServiceNow gives to your HR service delivery can make the whole experience very uniform for your employees. Another example would be, a company which has grown through acquisitions and has two different core HCM systems in place. So even there, HR service delivery can provide that common layer through the power of the HR profile. Moving on to the next slide, which is some of the integration options. So as I shared, that we do need to integrate with your core HCM system. ServiceNow provides spokes, through ServiceNow Store for some of the prevalent systems in the marketplace. As you can see on this chart, Oracle, Workday, SuccessFactors. So we do have spokes available to integrate with these systems, and these integrations basically, again, can be built to your liking. So the spoke may come with certain basic features in terms of movement of data, or sometimes even movement of tasks between one system to another. But then you can evolve it the way you want it to work. So some examples, customers have done are in terms of data on demand. So you also want that when an employee logs in into ServiceNow's Employee Center, they are able to see certain information, whether it may be about their leave balances or their compensation statement, onto their profile in the system. So that's where you build that advanced level integration, where you bring in information into the system. And then you can also use options like the virtual agent topics, etc., to create a flow that goes and updates something into your HCM system, or even goes and fetches some additional information from your HCM system. So all these integrations are possible. So probably needs a separate discussion on the topic itself, but for something for you all to consider when you are planning your implementation, that the technology makes it really easy to set up that single interface through the ServiceNow Employee Center. Moving on. So the fundamental purpose of the whole ServiceNow implementation is automation and digitization of your HR processes. And there are several options available for you to accomplish this. So case creation, there are various options to automate creation of cases, how the cases get routed, and how the cases get managed. So for a case creation option, you can have inbound emails, which come in if something happens in another system. It could trigger an email into ServiceNow, which could create a case for your team to handle. Or a user can also send an email to initiate a case, though we recommend that avoid that, try and go through the portal and not use inbound emails from individuals to create cases. However, important to note that if you are working with multiple systems, you can have events trigger in another system, an email into ServiceNow, which can initiate service delivery for your team in ServiceNow. And also another important thing to touch upon here is the bulk case creation functionality. So if you are already aware, then great, but sometimes our customers are not sure how it works. This comes inbuilt into the system. So it's not something that you have to configure, but if there are any kind of cases that are available in the system, you can do bulk case creation. So a simple example would be, in a country, you suddenly had a requirement, a legal requirement that employees need to sign a specific NDA based on certain requirements, etc. And you have 2,000 employees in that country. So you can use bulk case creation to generate those NDAs at the back end and send it out to those employees so that they sign and send it back instead of creating or following up with 2,000 people individually. Routing options, as I mentioned earlier, also that HR templates get invoked, when you start a service, and the templates sort of define the direction in terms of where the work needs to go. So it goes to specific assignment groups or whatever else you have configured in the template for how that service needs to be resolved. One key message here also is that you can also use advanced work assignment, which basically means that the system will assign based on the workload of individuals or their skill sets. So, for example, you have someone who specializes in payroll in Poland as an individual, and that's a skill they have. So when a request comes for payroll for Poland, it gets routed straight to that individual because they have the skill set to solve that kind of request. Or similarly, if there were 8 people who could do that work, then the system will also look at who's the one who's got the least amount of cases and assign the work to them. So these kind of automations you can build into the system. Fulfillment instructions and checklists, again, helpful aids for your agents, and you can fine tune them as per the type of cases. So a single type of case can have 2 or different sets of fulfillment instructions based on which team it has got routed to, and if the actions are supposed to be different or what needs to be done. Document templates, again, something to think about. If you want to automate document generation within your organization, typical example is employment verification letters. So companies can automate that through the system where you have a template available at the back end, and when an employee requests for employment verification, the system will auto create that based on the rules that you define and send it back to the employee without any human intervention. The last segment of this automation is task automations that you can build in. So depending on the complexity of service, you can build in multiple service activities, which could be additional tasks within that service, or even sub or child cases within that service to be able to fulfill that whole journey for that service. And then in addition to that, you also have ServiceNow Lifecycle Events Engine. So depending on how evolved you are, a lot of our customers are using today onboarding, offboarding, crossboarding in the system. And anything that doesn't get resolved through sort of available journey or lifecycle events in the system, you can build additional customization in that through the use of Flow Designer. Security in HR is a key consideration. As we all HR practitioners know that this is PII data, confidential information. So you want to be clear in terms of who has access to the information. ServiceNow follows the concept of groups, roles, and users. The system comes built with the certain HR groups. You will see them out of the box available. You can add additional groups, and then we assign roles to groups. So for example, there's a group responsible for resolving benefit queries globally, or there's a group responsible for resolving benefit queries in the APAC region. So you create those groups, and then you assign roles to that group of what their access levels are, and users are added to those groups. Client roles would define your access into the system for your clients. So whether it is your employees, whether it is your ex-employees or alumni, or it is your new hires. So these roles need to be defined, that who gets access to what kind of information into the system. And additionally, you have the option to build in more security onto a COE if you choose to do so. So the system already has a lot of rules and security built in, but if you have specific requirements from your business, then those can be considered too. From a user experience perspective, you have two stakeholders. One is your employees, and the other is your agents. So how does ServiceNow resolve for that? Now we have so far discussed the configuration for a case, but where does the case get initiated? That's where the Employee Center Pro comes into play. And important consideration when you're setting up case management, it works effectively with Employee Center. And Agent Workspace is something that has been introduced uh, not too long ago. So it's an evolution of what was the old Agent Workspace, and now we have configurable Agent Workspace, which provides a single pane of glass for your agents to be able to resolve cases. So when I log in as an agent, I can see the cases that are assigned to me. I can see the cases that are assigned to my team. I can look for help and support through now through Agent Assist feature on Agent Workspace, and a lot of other aids available for me to be able to do my work as an agent. So these two interfaces you will have to build as you build HR service delivery. And then, of course, is Now Mobile. Depending on the kind of organization you are, how important mobile is, you activate Now Mobile. And Now Mobile translates seamlessly from Employee Center Pro. So it gives you practically the same experience for people who are on the go. So there's an old adage, what gets measured gets done. And a lot of this functionality comes pre-built in ServiceNow. So our dashboards are available in HR, which is at 3 levels: for agents, for managers, and for HR leadership. These are static dashboards, and you can use them the way they are or refine them further with additional reports. So that option is available. Our typical recommendations to customers starting out is go with out of the box. And then in addition to having those standard dashboards available, once you activate performance analytics, you can do further level of analysis in terms of trend lining, or doing projections based on data that, okay, this is what's happened over the last 3 months or 6 months. What does the overall scenario looks like for the next 3 months? So you can do a lot of time-based analysis and reporting on your HR service delivery. We typically recommend that activate performance analytics when you set up your configuration for the first time, so the data collection jobs get started, and then you have enough data to do analysis sometime down the road for your system. And then, of course, case satisfaction service to get feedback from people on how the services are working out. As I come to the end of this section, we do want to talk about GenAI, because no conversations are complete today in technology without GenAI. So ServiceNow also has its product Now Assist for HRSD, and it's been developing pretty rapidly. So something for you to think about as you're planning about your HR service delivery. The way ServiceNow is thinking of the product is from 3 aspects. One is, how does it help the agent? How does it help the employee, the end user? And also, how does it help the people who are doing the configuration of the system? So there's something in the HRSD Now Assist solution for all these 3 stakeholders. Currently, you have options to do chat summarization. When a chat comes into you, instead of reading the whole thing, you can ask for a summary. You have resolution notes generation options. So you can basically generate resolution notes for a case after a case has been concluded using Now Assist. And of course, you can use Now Assist in search to get the responses overall from the system. So some of these things are in play already, and some of these things are evolving. One recommendation we want to give here is that if you're a new customer, then yes, if you want to activate Now Assist, you start with the logic that you want to activate it, and your quality of data, etc., is sort of aligned to it. But if you're an existing customer, we recommend that you do an analysis of your current system, because the quality of response of GenAI depends totally on the kind of data you have in the system. Do you have good, robust information in your HR profiles? Is your knowledge base structured efficiently or effectively? So sometimes companies find that they are not ready to initiate Now Assist. So we support doing this kind of assessment, checking the quality of data, and then of course activating Now Assist and taking the benefits of Now Assist. So with that, let me pass it on to Ian. I think we are slightly short on time.
Okay, hey, thanks, Sandeep. Not a problem. We'll get through knowledge here and leave a few minutes hopefully for some questions as well. So with no further ado. So knowledge management, as part of ServiceNow, it's been part of the platform, really forever. And HR really just has the ability to utilize it from more of a little bit more of a secure manner, as far as like it'll be a scoped application. So your broader knowledge admins could have limited access depending on the roles that they are provided. So otherwise, kind of the functional aspects of knowledge are shared across the platform. But in general, knowledge management is broken up into kind of two different views. You have the self-service aspect, and then you have your in-context or kind of the agent view. So we see most of our customers using typically two knowledge bases for HR minimum, one for that customer facing or the employee facing view, and then one for your internal knowledge or agent view. The employees can see knowledge through the ServiceNow application, so Now Mobile, through the portal. They can do things such as provide comments and rate knowledge articles, and these are critical things we'll discuss in more detail as far as how to ensure the quality of your knowledge articles as you maintain a knowledge base. The internal agent knowledge is great in that we have the ability to include this within the agent workspace view so that they can have contextual knowledge articles presented to them that they can then review for their own use or share with the requester. And all this is kind of wrapped around the rest of the workflows we'll discuss shortly here regarding knowledge. So as we look to start kind of understanding knowledge management, as an organization, you kind of look at knowledge needs to have a structure to it. So first you have to come up with the overall categorization, the overall, taxonomy, if you will, of the knowledge base. And we'll kind of talk more about that as well. But then once you have that structure in place, it's about capturing knowledge from your users and from your subject matter experts, using the knowledge within the platform, and then the continuous improvement from feedback and from other processes to keep making sure that knowledge is up to date. And then overall reporting and understanding visibility of the content health overall. As we deploy HR knowledge, most of it is kind of set up around you. First, you have the plugins activated. The initial step is to create the knowledge bases. And within each knowledge base, you have your categories. You'll have workflows for retire and publish. You'll have visibility and security, both around who can publish as well as who can view knowledge articles. Within the actual, when you're talking about creating knowledge content, there's functionality around knowledge blocks, and also aligning knowledge to your employee-centered taxonomy, which is kind of a little bit of a newer thing, but very critical step in order to allow that knowledge to be easily viewed and managed through Employee Center. And of course, we have out-of-the-box reports and dashboards to allow you to get to review the overall health of knowledge bases, review feedback, and adjust for any kind of if there's low scoring articles, out of date articles, things of that nature. We can view that from a dashboard perspective. There are three approaches to knowledge management that we most often see. We have a centralized approach, a decentralized approach, and then kind of a hybrid of the two. As we look at the centralized approach, that typically means you have a single or central knowledge team that owns the creation and maintenance of all the content. So they would manage meeting with subject matter experts to be able to identify kind of where the organization needs knowledge articles, and they would then work with the subject matter expert to actually create that content. When you talk about decentralized, it allows you to have your subject matter expert teams within each individual area, such as maybe a payroll, maybe there's a specific area within your HR organization that is going to be creating and is responsible for creating the knowledge content. This is probably what I see most commonly because of the ability to be close to the source of that knowledge. But we also do see hybrid approaches where you may have a central team as well as subject matter experts providing knowledge and kind of supporting the knowledge base. So really it's up to your organization to determine how you want to have that structured, but we can see any of these approaches be successful. A brief overview here of knowledge functionality. From an employee experience perspective, we have the knowledge widgets you'll see in Employee Center. We have AI-powered searches. So when you're doing searching for a particular text, we'll use AI to identify the knowledge articles that are relevant and bring you those results. If you're using generative AI, we can actually bring up a summary of the knowledge article in context, so you can see the actual, a summary of what actually the knowledge article says and give you the direct guidance based on generative AI capabilities. The user can subscribe to articles, so they get updates when new content is published. We have the ability to actually link into external content such as SharePoint and be able to search that as well. So external knowledge bases can be searched from one single place. And then, of course, we have through virtual agent, knowledge will be available there as well as through Now mobile app. The tools we have in place for governance, including having multiple knowledge bases. If you look at from a knowledge base perspective, each knowledge base you create is going to have its own rules for publishing, for security, and for just general structure, so the categorization. So if any of those things are different for if you have a specific area of your organization that has particular rules around, who should approve knowledge articles or how content should be visible, you may look at creating a separate knowledge base, but it's really going to be dependent on, adding multiple knowledge is not really a problem. So you can have as many as you want to have in here. There's just a couple of key things. You want to keep the number of knowledge bases to the minimum possible. We do have tools such as article versioning type templates, and they allow for styling. We have reusable knowledge blocks that allow for reusable content within knowledge articles, as well as several other security features such as group ownership, which allows for each individual knowledge article to have an ownership group, so that those specific people that may be subject matter experts, such as the knowledge articles around payroll, then maybe there's an ownership group with the payroll team, so that only the payroll people can actually approve or modify these knowledge articles. We do, of course, support translation as well and localization. And then around agent experience, we kind of talked a little about agent assist and contextual search. Basically allows you to bring up relevant results based on the subject of the request that comes in. We have, of course, you actually peruse a full catalog as an agent and have other filtering that happens dynamically for users. As within the case itself, within agent workspace, you can attach that article, you can flag it for follow-up or have issues. And there's also ways where you can create articles directly within context. If you allow that. And we spoke briefly about this, but the knowledge content architecture is really going to be based at the highest level around the knowledge base. Within each knowledge base, you'll have categories that you set up, and then under knowledge, and then each category will have one or more knowledge articles. Within the knowledge articles themselves, knowledge blocks can be reused and conditionally appear based on the user persona that is viewing the article. An example of this may be if you have in an international type of area, if there's a benefits that may be different depending on which region you're in, you can have a block that appears for EMEA that does not appear for US employees, or for other personas such as hourly versus salary workers, or anything you can imagine using HR criteria and user criteria to filter out visibility. As we map this visibility, the knowledge categories, you talk about employee-centered taxonomy is really where most of your end users are going to look for knowledge. So the taxonomy is important to have it set up so that your knowledge categories can be automatically mapped over, so that your articles will appear under the correct topics within employee-centered. So as you configure your knowledge bases, you can then also identify which topics align to which categories, and then have the articles appear under the correct topic or subtopic. So as we kind of talk about some of the the key considerations as you go to implement knowledge, really governance is one of the key areas to kind of understand. So defining your knowledge structure, the workflows for approval and for retirement, your localization and translation governance, versioning, and then of course, the templates and overall visual look of knowledge articles. It's definitely best practice to have some standardization of the style and formatting of the knowledge articles, so that you have consistency across different articles and for the user experience. Again, with the taxonomy, we just kind of briefly touched on, making sure that your knowledge article and knowledge contents are aligned with employee-centered taxonomy, and then just having a process involved for the management of knowledge articles, maintaining based on retirement date. There could be often see customers set up automatic retirement or review processes after, let's say, a year or 2 years, where that article will then go into a review. And then also using feedback and other metrics that we have available through reporting dashboards to understand where there may be gaps or concerns with knowledge quality. And so with that, I will hand it back over to Teresa.
Awesome. Thank you so much, both of you. That was really great information that was shared. We also have some additional resources which are available to you depending on what your needs are. So once this presentation is posted, again, you'll have access to this. You'll be able to click on all of these links to access each of these sites. Many of the resources that we shared today are always available for download on Now Create. And if you didn't know, you can provide feedback on every asset through Now Create by using the thumbs up, thumbs down icon in the lower left on each asset record. We do receive and read the feedback, and we add what we can to our work list. So we would love to hear from you about what is working well or what could be improved as you utilize the resources. With that, thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to connecting with you in the future.